Hello. How are
Hello.
you
I'm
doing?
doing well. How are you?
I'm good.
It's so nice to see
Um, Nice
you.
to see you too. So, so I can't see you actually. Now that I say nice to see you, I can't actually see your video, but I hear
Oh,
you and
oh,
you
that's
can
weird.
see me. So we're gonna go with that and hope for the best.
Okay. I shared video. I can see me.
Interesting. Who knows? It's Instagram Live. Who knows?
I
So,
know.
um, you we'll see. So,
Yes. We'll see.
yeah,
Okay, I'll share this too in that way.
great.
I think that worked. Okay, we'll see.
Okay,
More we'll
awesome.
see.
Yeah. So hi everyone. My name is Michelle Vakinas. I'm the founder and executive director of the Colette Louise Tisdale Foundation. We are a nonprofit with a mission to improve outcomes in perinatal and infant health and aid in the grieving process through financial assistance, education, advocacy. We are most known for a financial assistance program, and that helps families dealing with high risk and complicated pregnancies, NICU stays, and loss. We're coming up on our 6-year anniversary, which is crazy. And in that time, we've helped almost 2,500 families, all 50 states, and given away over 1.5 million. So it's been a really crazy time. And just recently, I was really thinking about and loving that I've met so many other incredible parents. And I was just like, I want to tell the world about these parents because everyone's doing such amazing things. And so we came up with this series. And so I think this is our second in the series right now of Rockstar Parents and just really talking to parents that we've met and we've gotten the opportunity to get to know and hearing about what they're doing and just sharing a little bit about their world, their lives. And so I'm thrilled. I'm so excited to have Parijat with us. And she and I were connected by a fellow friend and are both lost moms, are both doing a lot of work in just trying to help other families. And I'm really thrilled to have her with you. So welcome.
Hello, Michelle.
Hello. So, yeah, so thank you so much for joining us and, for everything that you do. I want to sort of just let you introduce yourself, tell a little bit about your parenthood journey, and what you're doing work-wise now.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Parijat, and I'm the founder of Ruvel, which is the only trauma-informed company that's dedicated specifically to improving high-risk pregnancy outcomes and helping parents pass on generational health. And we do that through teaching neurobiological somatic approaches to somatic health, overall health, and navigating healthcare. And I love that you and I are connected, Michelle, because our work is so beautifully aligned and in terms of how we're helping our communities. And like you, I do this work because I walked the journey myself. I'd always wanted to be in women's health since I was a child. I wanted to be an OBGYN. Chemistry knocked that idea off the table very quickly. And so I took a different detour into women's health, but really it was, I call it life university happened. And I went, oh, okay, this is what it's like to actually go through infertility. This is what it's actually like to go through losses. This is what it's actually like to go through a high risk pregnancy. And I say that because right before we started trying to grow our family, which actually ended up happening sooner than we had planned just because of health issues that we knew I had. I was teaching at my alma mater. I was teaching a developmental psychology class and teaching about the developmental impact of being born preterm, being born under 2 pounds. And then I had a child that was born preterm under 2 pounds. And I went, I would teach that class entirely differently now that I
Right.
know what it's actually like. So it's that whole personal experience of going through all of that, a lengthy NICU stay, then raising a child with health complications in this complicated world. And all of that put together allowed me to first start my private practice for teaching people how to use neurobiological approaches to improving pregnancy outcomes. that grew into then writing my books, and then ultimately has grown into developing Ruvel as a way to reach more and more people, and fill those gaps that the medical and mental health systems leave for people like us.
Yeah, yeah. Incredible work that you're doing. I love it. And, I know that you are really just creating awareness and support. And I think that all of that is huge, especially in this community. And you talk a little bit about kind of the crazy world we're in, right? And that can mean a lot of different things. But when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to sort of just like, the day to day of navigating medical issues, what do you see that as? Like, why would you describe it as crazy? What is? I mean, there's so much, but I mean, what would you say is crazy about it?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's how much we have to fight for basic care, especially in reproductive health, especially if you identify as a woman or have a uterus or ovaries. There's so much fighting that has to be done for just basic care.
Mhm.
I have personal experience of this. My clients have personal experience with this, where then there's also a lot of fighting that has to be done to be taken
Right.
seriously. It's almost like we walk into the medical system with this attitude of, you're wrong, prove me otherwise. As the
Mhm.
patient, we hear that, and then we have the burden of proving, which is completely backwards in my perspective. I think that as patients, as people who have lived experience in our own bodies, the assumption should be, I believe you,
Mhm.
and then let's figure out what's actually going on, which is the exact opposite of what's actually happening, and I think because of those things, and then you add in the racial elements to it, you add systemic racism into it, you add so many the fact that clinical research takes so long to enter actual practice, and so we have all this available to us that is not being translated to patients. You add all these layers onto it, and I think that makes accessing care unnecessarily difficult. I think that's how we end up with such a high rate of medical errors, medical neglect. That's how we end up with so many people feeling like they're being gaslit by their medical team, which then results in more impact on our physiology through the lens of traumatic stress, which is going to then ultimately impact our health overall. So we get
Right.
stuck in this awful cycle. And that's just for like reproductive health. We didn't even talk about pediatrics and what it's like to then be a parent in that
Mhm.
world with a child with medical complexities. And I think the system's broken, and I think we need to start
Right.
over and rebuild it with people like us at the center of it, people who have lived experience to go, this is actually what we need. I have a whole opinion about what to do with the insurance systems
Right.
and
Right.
all that.
Right. Maybe that's another
Yeah.
segment. Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think that it is really exhausting to fight for, like you said, basic care, right? To just feel heard, to go through all of that, and to be in a world where I feel like we sort of glorify our doctors,
Mm,
and we don't. So it's this implicit, like, well, you should trust your doctor, and it's like, yeah, you should, but if you don't, like, you also are the expert on your own
yeah.
body, or your child's body if they're not old enough to really, advocate for themselves. And I think that that's something really important, really key, and that I love that you're really out there and expressing this, and sort of saying, join in the fight with us, because I'm with you. I feel like I have had to fight so much over the years, for myself and for my kids. And I am at a point, right? I have a lot of privilege. I have education. I have the ability to do this. I have, the ability to find another doctor. I have all of that. And so I think a lot about, whether it's our clients, other people who just don't have that same privilege and luxury to really advocate for themselves. And I think that's a problem for
Yeah.
sure. Um, yeah. So tell us a little bit more about Ruvel. I think that this is a really great idea and concept, and so I'd love to hear more about it.
Sure. And thank you. I've appreciated your support from the inception of the idea when I shared it with you a while ago, and up till now. Ruvel is I call it the amalgamation of all the work that I have done up until now. I started my work as a practitioner working one-on-one with clients, did a few groups here and there, had some courses, and all that was great. But every single client had such incredible health results that were trackable on blood work, that was trackable on all the tests they were seeing. Their whole body was changing because of the neurobiological work we were doing. And I felt like I was coming up against a ceiling of there's only so much that I can do individually, seeing clients one on one. And I really imagined this work, filling these huge craters in the medical and mental health system. I didn't know that I could do that as a just a private practitioner. I wanted to have a much bigger impact so more people can access the different levels of support that we have at whatever point in the process they're at, right?
Mhm.
So, basically have taken everything that I used to do with my private clients and put it into Ruvel in two different forms. One is through products in our shop, and we are building out that shop, and so more and more products are going to be coming later this month and over the next few months. And then we have our private membership, which we're calling our club, where you get to come in and actually spend time and really practice what it's like to take a neurobiological somatic approach to different aspects of your health and your healthcare. We have mini classes, we've got longer classes, we've got a somatic meditation room where you can actually practice what that's like, which is always surprising to people how slow and small those steps actually are, because we have this belief that it's got to be these big huge
Right.
swings we take. And so it's a nice place to really gently practice that. And we've got mixers, and it's just a place that envision for people like you and me to belong. When I was going through this, it was just kind of low risk pregnancies was the default. And then
Mhm.
I had to pretzel myself in to fit in, and I never did.
Right.
I still remember I was on modified activity restrictions at home really early in my pregnancy, and my friends dropped off a whole stack of books, pregnancy books. They're like, here, have some books to read. You can kill time that way. And I'm sitting there and I'm going, where does it say low PAP A? Where does it say marginal
Right.
cord insertion? And like, there's two lines, if anything, in there. And I didn't want that anymore. Like, I want high risk pregnancy to be center stage. I want a place for people like me to know that is where you belong, where the complications are, where things are not going the way you want or need or deserve. There's a place for you, and it's not too dark, and you're not shoved into the corner. You're in the spotlight because you
Mhm.
deserve it. So that's essentially what Ruvella is. That's what we provide. Any questions you have about healthcare, about your health, we have support for you, whether through our shop or through our membership. We've got you covered.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've always loved this idea since the very first time you presented it to me when it was just, the little seeds of an
Yeah.
idea and stuff, all the way through, because I do think, I mean, you talk a lot about this, and I think in addition to how all of this complications with the healthcare system, it's, we know so little, we're told so little,
Yes.
and I think especially when we come to reproductive, right, we're told the smiley happy stories, and we're not told about the others. Um, and I think I've shared with you, but I definitely have said this before. When I was hospitalized with preeclampsia, I will tell you the only thing I knew about preeclampsia was an old episode of ER
Mhm.
where a woman in the emergency room dies of
Ah,
preeclampsia
ah,
and Dr. Green gets sued. That's the only thing I knew of
yes.
preeclampsia.
Yes.
And so, to be in that space, right? And I was, educated. I had gone through infertility. I had had many, many friends have children. And to be in that world where that was the only thing I knew was so scary to be in that. And so I think that's also another thing that I feel like is really great that you're doing is just educating about this. So somebody can come to it and be like, okay, so now I got this diagnosis or this, restriction on anything, and I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
And I'm not finding the support because, like you said, I mean, there's so many pregnancy books that are just all about the norm. And yeah, you get a couple lines here and there about, maybe a preterm birth or a slight complication or this and that, and that's it.
Yeah.
And, it's really hard to find your footing in that world. So yeah, I really do love that. You talked about products. So can you give us some ideas of some products that could help? Um,
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got my two books so far, two of a few. They're coming. But we've got Pregnancy Brain, we've got the Body Language Journal, both are in our shop. And then we have mini and full-fledged courses. So Pregnancy Brain course is a great follow-up to Pregnancy Brain. It's a really nice accompaniment during your high-risk pregnancy. So we definitely recommend that. And we've got mini courses that are just kind of really small, snippets of very specific questions. So like you said, you come in, you go, oh, I've got this thing going on right now, or oh, I have this particular complication, or how do I find a new whatever. Those are the kinds of mini courses that we'll have available. Also, possibly in ebook form, where we're still working on the modality of what's going to be most effective for people. And then we've got our merchandise, of course, but the intention of the products is really for you to be able to come in and get an answer to a very specific question that goes beyond what you would find in a Google search. We all know we're all Google searching. That's fine. As I tell my clients, it's okay. Let's take it a little bit deeper and make it yours. And the intention is really to help you feel empowered to go, I understand what's happening. This is what I don't understand is happening. And this is how I get those answers. And this is what I do if I can't find those answers with the current team that I have built. And it's always in line with trying to make sure that we no longer have that experience that I know that you and I had of we're very well educated, very well informed, and still we have no idea what's going on. And we're waiting, going, this is why I turned to the magic 8 ball during my pregnancy, because at some point I'm like, there's no information. That can't be a solution anymore. We are
Right.
in 2024, no more. So
Yeah.
that's what we are building out our shop to be.
Yeah, no, no, that's great, and I love that, and I think really, and I think you've used this term, but if you haven't, I feel like it's very much about community and learning from each other and supporting each other, um, and it's something that I'm very big about, always with it. I mean, I would not be parenting after loss without a group of friends that I go to with everything, that just, I have a group of friends that we're on a chat and 95% of what we're messaging each other is just, we got triggered by something, we had an overreaction to something that we know is based on this. We just were angry at, people who just assume you just can have another kid, right? And just don't understand the complexities of that. And that's really something, I mean, quite honestly, I don't think I would be an effective parent without that, is having that outlet. And, I think you educating and doing that and saying, like, this is what you need to know. And, this is another part of your team and your
Yeah.
toolkit. I think it's really
Yeah.
great.
It's so essential, isn't it, to have people in your life that have that shared language. I
Right.
mean, I think there's just something that brings such a sense of belonging that all is stripped away so early on in that process when you go through something that most people don't understand. That
Mhm.
sense of belongingness goes away, and then you find your people and you go, oh, I belong here. And yeah,
Right.
that's exactly what we're doing with our membership, is to give a place for people to belong.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, 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 definitely. Yeah, and I'm sure, we can kind of talk through, and we could probably spend hours on this of like the infertility journey and how, people just, there's this sense of like, you just have kids, right? There's no like, oh, and then what happens if it doesn't work the
Yeah.
way that, it's supposed to? And just all of that. And then, in loss and with medical complications and all of that, that's, more stuff on it. This is really complicated and definitely is causing a lot of stress for, those of us who are going through it.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess, there's a lot of things you could say, but I guess for those of us who go through kind of those difficult stages, what would your piece of advice be, other than going to Revell and being part of that? But what would you say is your advice that you would give to a parent?
I think I would honestly, if I could only give one, I would say it's not your fault. And the sooner you can really, truly believe that, the simpler the process is going to be. It's not going to be easy.
Right.
I don't think anything makes it easier,
Mhm.
but it does make it simpler because you're no longer fighting yourself.
Mhm.
You are spending that energy fighting where I still think you shouldn't have to fight, but here we are, that you're putting that energy towards building the team that is actually going to support you, that's going to believe you, creating the opportunities to have access to treatments or consultations or something in a way that actually has what I call like a high ROI, that you try it and you're more likely to have the result that you're looking for because you're using that energy
Mhm.
elsewhere. And I know that that's hard to do. I know, oh gosh, how many
Right.
years have I spent blaming myself.
Oh,
And that's why I think I do this work, is because I want you to hear that we do that because we don't have enough answers, and it's easier to turn it inwards and go, I'm going to blame here because I don't know what else to blame out there. And if you can do that work, to turn that around and go, I will not carry this. This is not my fault. I am going to spend that energy to figure out what I can do to build the family that I want and deserve. It will just simplify the process so much, and it'll give you an opportunity to experience what you deserve, right? Which is that compassion and building out the village and the team that you need to support you in whatever direction you want to go in.
yeah. No, I think that's a great advice. And I was thinking too, like, one of the things that I struggled with is I feel like in this like view of like, you decide you're gonna you have kids. And when I was stuck in that where it was like we were doing everything we could,
Yeah.
I feel like there's this message in society of like, well, then something's wrong with you, right?
Yes.
And whether it's you or your partner or whatever, it's mostly concentrated on women.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of both, right? And so it feels very much like there is something wrong with you and that there is that
Yes.
self blame. And so I do think that like that's one reason why I share my story over and over again is we need to make this part of, pregnancy and infertility and all of that stuff
Yes.
part of the conversation because all of these things feel very isolating. If you're in a world and like everyone you know around you has just gotten pregnant and had babies,
Yeah.
it feels very isolating, even
Yes.
though there's so many of us who have experienced this and so many of us who are going through this and so many people who will go through it. And I think that that's also really important. So yeah, I definitely agree. And I think, I mean, especially, right, we call it mom guilt, we call it parent guilt, whatever it is, we can do a number on
Oh,
ourselves over all of that stuff.
yeah.
And, so I think it's really important to just like step back and say, it's not your fault and you're doing the best you
Yeah.
can with your circumstances. So
Yeah.
I think that's really great advice and what I want to do. Um, in terms of advocating for yourself, what are some like quick tips you would have sort of in the healthcare system, what you would use, what
Yeah.
you would suggest?
I think there's kind of two ways to answer that question. One is, you've got to deal with the medical trauma that's happened.
Mhm.
And I think as long as we don't do that, it does make the behavior that and the actions that we want to take that much harder. So I will start by saying that I don't mean to say that as a negative or kind of to discourage anyone, but really just as a reminder, like there's a whole thing going on underneath that does make advocating that much harder, if we don't deal with what's going on underneath. That said, after, when we're talking about what to do, what actions to take, I often start by saying you have to make sure you have the right team around you. And I think that's where it all begins. And I say that recognizing that not everybody has access to a lot of different options. Like you were saying, Michelle, earlier, not everybody has that, right? Maybe your insurance doesn't allow that. Maybe you live in a rural area and you don't actually have access to people. And I think this is where we lean into health tech really hard here. You don't have to have a person in person on your team. You can have consultations with people virtually. I have been that person, and I have brought on people for my own team in that way too. In fact, I'm meeting somebody later this week that way. They don't live in my area, but they are the people who I know can help me. And so I would start right there and first, like, take a whole audit of your team. Who's on your team right now? What purpose are they serving? What purpose are they supposed to serve? And does that match? And I
Mhm.
find that that exercise alone is very eye opening for people to go, oh, my endocrinologist is supposed to help me with my thyroid disorder, but every time I go and talk to them, they're telling me to lose weight.
Right. Hmm.
That's not a match. And that's a
Right.
really good opportunity to go, I kind of want to talk to somebody else. And
Hmm.
again, you can go in network, you can go to somebody locally if you have them, or go to any one of these women's health apps. Find that endocrinologist and just talk to them. Have a 15-minute conversation. Because sometimes all we need to hear is a different perspective to realize there are providers out there that are willing to do that for us, to think outside the box or ask different questions.
Hmm.
That's where I would begin. Rebuild your team. Really get honest with yourself about, are the people on my team doing what they're supposed to be doing? And if not, where can I find new people? I very often recommend that when you're looking for a second opinion or third opinion or looking to rebuild your team, go outside the community that you've already been in. You know, a lot of my clients at the beginning will say, "Oh, well, let me ask my OB for a second opinion referral," but those people are going to know people who think like them. And what
Mhm.
we're looking for is think way outside.
Right.
So don't ask your OB for another OB referral.
Right.
Go to your, where are you in your OB? Go to a completely different clinic or go to a completely different medical system or healthcare system, or maybe it's a private clinic, you know, find another place that's going to actually give you a new opinion. And that's where I would start, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's a really great first step. And I would say, in addition to that, is like follow your gut and your intuition.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Totally.
I had this issue, and I've shared this before with my son's pediatrician. It was a referral from good friends of ours. When we did a virtual meet and greet, you know, hello COVID, and COVID baby. I didn't like her.
Yeah.
There was something that just didn't sit right with me.
Yes.
My husband liked her, and I convinced myself out of it that as a parent of loss, like I wasn't going to like anybody who would take care of my
Yeah.
kid. And so I sort of wrote that off. And we went 6 months, and every appointment, again, COVID, I was going by myself. Every appointment, I just left feeling terrible. And the 6 month appointment just sent me over the edge. And so, I remember telling my husband to come meet us in the waiting room. And he saw me. And as soon as he saw me, I burst into tears. And he was like, "Were the shots that bad?" And I was like, "I'm not even talking about the shots." Like, and I basically cried the whole way home
Oh,
and
yeah.
said, "When I go to this, I feel like a terrible mother. And I can't do this anymore." And, we switched doctors and night and day. Right. And it's
Yes.
not to say that she wasn't a good doctor, it's just she wasn't a fit for
Yes.
us. And, you know, who knows why, and honestly, who cares?
Yeah.
But I found instead a doctor, and it happened to be that the doctor that we found was who was on call in the hospital, and she herself is a lost mom. And
Mm,
so, for me, it's really great because when I ask her questions, I know she's coming from the science, but she's also coming from the lost mom
yes.
perspective. And both of those together, really make me feel more confident in any decisions or any, things that we're doing.
Yeah.
So I think, really acknowledging that, is it a doctor that just makes you uncomfortable or
Ah,
just doesn't seem to get you or whatever it
yeah.
is? Maybe that's not the right fit for
And I
you. Um,
think I want to tie it back to something that you said earlier about we glorify
mhm,
medical providers. Because your story just reminded me too. I went through something very similar when my son was also about that age, like 6 to 8 months old. Um, his one of his pulmonologist was one of the people who developed the Synagis shot, which is for RSV. And in my head, I'm like, whoa, okay, great. That's exactly what we need. Like, we need somebody who understands this. And so I stuck with him. And that pulmonologist we had to see very often. So there were a lot of opportunities to have these conversations. And every time I left feeling like I was a terrible parent.
mhm,
And in my head, I'm going, yeah, but he knows and he's so good at this. And it took me about 8 months, me still, right? After everything we had been through, it still happened. So I'm just sharing this because if it's happening to you, I get it.
right.
But there was a point at which he made a comment to me, and I was like, this is the last time I'm going to see you. Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Goodbye.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah. Yeah.
switched, and it was the same thing as you. It was suddenly like, oh, this is what it feels like to be trusted
Right.
as a
Right.
parent. Because I
And
see this kid between the appointments. You need to be able to trust me.
right. Right. Absolutely. And to understand where you're coming from
Yeah.
and all of that. And I think that's something, I have often said is, I think we need to start reframing this as we are customers. Um,
Yes.
and, these is somebody we are paying to do something, right? Whether it's us paying or insurance
Uh huh.
paying, we're doing this. So if you think about, you were treated like that by somebody at a restaurant or in a store, would you ever go back? Probably not. And
Right.
so we can do some of those similar things. We might be more limited, but we can do some of those similar things in that same context. And I think that's so important and something that we lose sight of,
Mm-hmm.
because of some of those other
So,
issues.
so true.
Well, it was a pleasure, as always, to talk to you, and I really appreciate everything you're doing. And I look forward to having more of these conversations and talking more of that. Anyone listening, so you can find us. We're at ColetteLouise.com. You can also follow us on Instagram and everything. We always say that we do a lot of work with financial assistance, and we have worked it so that 100% of donations go directly to families in need. So if you are willing or able, we would love if you donated at our website. And also, if you know any amazing Rockstar parents, send them our way. We would love to have chats like this with them. So thank you so much again, and have a great rest of your day, everyone. Bye-bye.